In the heart of the Caribbean, calm waves hit a weapon born of precision 37 Venezuelan drones rising before dawn. Their target, a United States-flagged tanker named Ocean Liberty, gliding unknowingly through contested waters near Isla Margarita. Within minutes, the sky turned electric. Risk-free can Triarine PV units, each no larger than a backpack, pierced steel decks and crippled the ship's propulsion, not with fire, but with surgical intent. No missiles, no fleets, just silent speed and geometry. Inside a hidden command bunker, Colonel Rafael Ortega, engineer turned tactician, watched as his swarm rewrote the math of naval warfare. For Washington, it was an alarm. For Caracas, a demonstration. And for the world, a glimpse into a new era where dominance is measured not by tonnage, but by code and coordination. This is the story of how a fleet was stopped without a war being declared. Stay till the end, because once you see Margarita dawn, you'll understand why the oceans will never feel safe again. The Caribbean Sea shimmered beneath a hard noon light, but beneath its calm surface ran invisible lines of tension. For months, the maritime corridors between the Lesser Antilles and the Venezuelan coast had become a chessboard for naval patrols, surveillance flights, and proxy warnings. Oil routes, once marked by commercial traffic, now pulsed with radar signals and encrypted transmissions. Every vessel that crossed near Venezuelan waters was scanned, tagged, and logged by coastal defense networks newly modernized under a military initiative known as Operación Centinela Azul, Blue Sentinel. At the heart of this tightening perimeter stood Colonel Rafael Ortega, commander of the Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade, stationed near Bahia de Concordia. Ortega was no traditional officer. A former aeronautics engineer, he had studied the cost-benefit asymmetries of drone warfare long before the concept became global doctrine. In his dimly lit operations room, maps of the Caribbean stretched across digital walls. Red and green icons flickered, representing ship satellites and sensor buoys deployed in overlapping arcs. Each dot was a potential intruder, each line a potential act of defiance. Venezuela's leadership under immense economic sanctions had shifted toward hybrid deterrence strategies that blurred the line between defense and provocation. Drones, cheap and deniable, became both sword and shield. Ortega's brigade tested dozens of indigenous FPV prototypes, some adapted from civilian racing platforms, others assembled from imported Iranian circuitry. Behind these machines lay a single idea to restore control over the nation's maritime frontiers, without firing a missile or launching a warship. Across the sea, the United States Navy's 5th Fleet Logistics Branch had increased its private chartered tanker convoys, supplying energy reserves to bases in the Caribbean Passage 41 corridor. The U.S. viewed the route as international water. Caracas viewed it as a pressure point. Disputes over maritime jurisdiction had already triggered diplomatic notes between Washington and Caracas, yet neither side retreated. Surveillance satellites captured constant motion Venezuelan patrol boats shadowing tankers, and in return, U.S. reconnaissance aircraft tracing Venezuelan radar emissions. By early October, reports reached Ortega's command that a U.S.-flagged vessel, Ocean Liberty, planned to cross near Isla Margarita to shorten transit time. The ship, a converted fuel tanker operating under Pentagon contracts, symbolized what Caracas called imperial disregard. To Ortega, it was an opportunity to test the swarm doctrine he had theorized for years, an operation that could demonstrate precision control and deterrence all at once. As twilight spread over Bahia de Concordia, radar technicians calibrated the FSC-9 coordination net, a low-latency mesh linking 37 FPV drones. Engineers in dusty uniforms soldered final transmitters. The hum of electronics filled the bunker as Ortega reviewed the satellite feed, showing the tanker's expected trajectory. He traced his finger along a digital map from Point Caravelas to Isla Margarita, murmuring one strike, no escalation. Outside waves crashed against the fortified pier. Antennas rotated slowly, scanning the open sea where geopolitics and gravity were about to converge. The Caribbean night, humid and electric, waited for its spark. Colonel Rafael Ortega leaned over the holographic projection of the Caribbean theater, his weathered hands tracing luminous lines that curved toward Isla Margarita. Around him, officers from the Bolivarian Navy and the newly formed Drone Operations Unit waited in tense silence. The colonel's voice, low and deliberate, cut through the hum of generators. "We don't aim to sink," he said. "We aim to paralyze. The message must travel faster than the damage." His strategic calculus rested on three pillars: surprise, saturation, and deniability. The Ocean Liberty would enter Venezuela's self-declared exclusive economic zone within hours. Its convoy escort was minimal, one lightly armed U.S. security vessel and a Royal Netherlands Navy radar post stationed near Curacao. To Ortega, the imbalance was ideal. He planned to deploy a multi-phase FPV swarm strike, relying on the newly networked FSC-9 mesh to synchronize dozens of drones, guided by low-altitude terrain data and real-time feedback loops. Each drone carried a CDPW-2 composite deck penetrator warhead, calibrated to breach but not ignite. The strike's intention was not destruction, but demonstration to halt a tanker without killing its crew or igniting a spill that could devastate Caribbean waters. At 0200 hours, intelligence officers delivered infrared reconnaissance captured by Venezuelan patrol UAVs. The images revealed the tanker's slow drift toward the 12-mile maritime boundary, escorted only by radar pings from a distant U.S. surveillance drone. Ortega's deputy major Esteban Salazar questioned the risk. "Sir, the Americans will see this as an act of war." Ortega's reply was mechanical, his gaze fixed on the moving red dot on the screen. "They already declared it when they entered our waters under contract. We are simply correcting geography." In Puerto Cabello, Iranian advisors from the Quds technical mission finalized encryption patches for the FSC-9 system. Their input had transformed Venezuela's early drone prototypes into a functional swarm network. Within the underground hangars of Bahia de Concordia, engineers ran final diagnostics ensuring each FPV drone maintained telemetry integrity within a 50-kilometer radius. The air was heavy with the smell of fuel and solder, an orchestra of last-minute tension. Ortega reviewed the operational code one last time, ensuring the drone's AI-assisted target locks would identify structural weak points, propulsion shafts, electrical conduits, radar towers. "We fight poverty with precision," he murmured, recalling his early years as an engineer watching foreign tankers extract Venezuela. His philosophy had hardened into doctrine. Modern deterrence was not built on size, but intelligence, on how cheaply one could impose paralysis upon an adversary. At 0430, the control bunker dimmed its lights. Green icons marked 37 drones across the operations map. Their call signs flickered one by one, Condor 1 through Condor 37. Ortega authorized Mission Margarita Dawn. The control AI confirmed data synchronization and signal encryption. Over the internal comms, he spoke the words that would later echo across international media launch window is sunrise. Let them see the new arithmetic of war. Beyond the coast, the horizon was turning pale. The first gusts of wind brushed over Isla Margarita's cliffs, carrying with them a hum not of engines but of anticipation. The Caribbean, once tranquil, was moments away from witnessing the future of asymmetric conflict, silent, autonomous, and untraceable until impact. The ocean. Liberty rode low in the water, its steel flanks sweeping endless black, a Leviathan repurposed into a logistics lifeline for the United States Navy. Its civilian master, Captain Thomas Mercer, logged the ship's position in a worn bridge notebook, unaware that a chessboard of sensors and mesh networks had already painted his route in hostile colors. A United States Navy liaison Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes moved between the bridge and the small security detachment, coordinating rules of engagement and advising the commercial crew on evasive measures should they be contested near Isla Margarita. The tanker's design prioritized cargo over combat. A broad deck with hatches and piping redundant propulsion shafts and a modest self-defense package supplied by its private security contractor. Despite this, the Ocean Liberty projected an aura of strategic value, a floating node in the supply chain that fed bases and contractors across the Caribbean Passage, or 41 Corridor. For Colonel Rafael Ortega and the Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade, The vessel was a perfect demonstration target, high-value, low military escalation, and rich with structural vulnerabilities. On the bridge, Captain Thomas Mercer reviewed the maritime charts, showing the declared track that cut within range of Isla Margarita's radar umbrella. The tanker's AIS transponder remained active. The United States Navy had ordered minimal electronic silence to avoid unnecessary escalation. That paradox, visible on commercial channels but discreet in military feeds, complicated defensive planning. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes instructed the security team to maintain heightened watch and to report any anomalous radar contacts immediately to the escorting security vessel. The United States Navy liaison knew international law favored freedom of navigation, but law did not defend against an adversary who chose ambiguity. Technical assessments aboard to the Ocean Liberty underestimated one critical threat: Vector low observable low-altitude FPV craft operating beneath traditional radar horizons. The FSC-9 coordination net, designed by Venezuela, deliberately exploited this gap. The network combined encrypted mesh relays and ground-based line-of-sight repeaters to shepherd FPV drones through cluttered coastal airspace. Each FPV carried the CDPW-2 composite deck penetrator warhead engineered to focus blast energy onto thin deck plating and runways of piping without producing a full-scale explosion. In the hands of the Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade, those characteristics translated into paralysis rather than annihilation. Aboard the security vessel, United States Navy radars pinged suspicious returns, fleeting blips that failed to resolve into conventional aircraft signatures. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes ordered an immediate infrared sweep and queried regional Allied assets for corroboration. The Royal Netherlands Navy radar post near Curaçao responded with intermittent coverage. Sensor fusion was imperfect and delayed. Meanwhile, Venezuelan patrol boats kept discrete distances, broadcasting innocuous patrol frequencies, while their coastal operations centers fed FSC-9 with timing cues. Colonel Rafael Ortega watched the comms feed in Bahia de Concordia and felt the careful geometry of the plan align the ocean. Liberty would be within effective range as dawn softened the horizon. On deck, crewmen smelled diesel and the faint tang of sea. They could not smell the inference of strategy closing in. Captain Thomas Mercer logged a routine message to his charterer headquarters and asked Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes about the distance to the nearest naval support. The United States Navy liaison's answer arrived as a measured assurance help was en route, but outside immediate horizon for the Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade, that temporal gap was the margin for action. Venezuela's coastal maps lesioned with sensor nodes, and the FSC-9 mesh made the sea around Isla Margarita less neutral and far more tactical than any paper chart suggested. The first drones left the hangars of Bahia de Concordia like pale insects against sodium orange dawn, their propellers a whisper beneath the gulls. Each aircraft was small enough to fit inside a pickup bed, yet precise enough to carry a CDPW-2 composite deck penetrator warhead into the vulnerable seams of a tanker deck. The Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade had rehearsed this choreography for weeks. Engineers adjusted pitch-trimmed flight stabilizers and verified the low-latency handshake with the FSC-9 coordination net one last time before release. Colonel Rafael Ortega watched telemetry bloom across his console altitude speed battery life micro camera feeds. The FSC-9 coordination net held them in a virtual tightrope sequencing Condor 1 through Condor 37 into staggered attack lanes designed to confuse and overload conventional detection. This mesh used line-of-sight relays on Isla Margarita's ridgelines and mobile repeaters aboard discrete patrol boats to maintain control where satellites and high-altitude radars could not. Venezuela had invested in redundancy. Redundancy was doctrine. As the first wave approached the tanker, the Ocean Liberty's crew reported erratic contacts on the thermal scoped things that resolved into slashes of motion far too small for conventional aircraft. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes instructed the security team to hold fire, fearing escalation would produce a catastrophic oil spill. The United States Navy liaison's restraint bought the Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade the window it needed. The drones descended into cluttered coastal airspace, slipping beneath radar horizons and using sea spray plumes to mask visual acquisition. Condor 7 and Condor 12 struck first, their CDPW-2 warheads focused on midship deck plating adjacent to auxiliary power couplings. The composite penetrators did not detonate like conventional munitions. They shaped blast energy inward, punching through steel and shearing cables without detonating fuel stores. The result was surgical breached deck plating, severed electrical buses, and the sudden blackout of the Ocean Liberty's secondary generators. Venezuela's engineers had calibrated yield and angle to produce incapacitation rather than conflagration. The second wave targeted propulsion control conduits. Condor 19 and Condor 22 executed pop-up approaches from vector angles the tanker's lookouts could not track in time. Mechanical linkages to the propulsion shafts were fractured by precision strikes, leaving the Ocean Liberty unable to steer or sustain speed. The United States Navy personnel aboard the escort called for emergency assistance, but naval assets were still many minutes away across the Caribbean Passage 41. Time had become the Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade's ally. Paralysis, once induced, is costly to reverse. Throughout the assault, international sensor feeds flickered with conflicting reports. The Royal Netherlands Navy radar post near Curaçao registered transient blips and classified them as seabird clutter until the American liaison insisted on infrared overlays. Meanwhile, Iranian technical advisors in Puerto Cabello monitored FSC-9 encryption integrity, ensuring command handoffs remained uncompromised. Venezuela's hybrid approach had blended indigenous craft foreign technical support and localized terrain advantage into a single deniable vector. When the final Condor returned to Bahia de Concordia, a hush swept Ortega's bunker. The Ocean Liberty lay dead in the water, her crew safe, her decks scarred, her engines silent. The Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade had achieved a precise political message, an ability to impose cost without immediate mass destruction. The Caribbean morning held its breath as navies and diplomats began to calculate the consequences. The Ocean Liberty shuddered as the first composite penetrator struck its midship conduits, a concentrated wound that severed control linkages and plunged auxiliary switchboards into staccato darkness. Crewmen stumbled in corridors warmed by late sunlight, scrambling toward emergency panels as Captain Thomas Mercer barked concise orders to assess casualties and contain hazards. The onboard damage control teams moved with practiced steadiness. Their training under United States Navy advisories turned chaos into procedure, yet procedures could not immediately restore. What had been engineered out of service, steering responsiveness, redundant power, and the integrated sensors that sustained the tanker's situational awareness. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Sarah Hayes watched telemetry collapse in discrete segments. We have multiple structural breaches to electrical buses and 2 propulsion control linkages compromised, she reported into the satellite uplink. Her voice steady carried the immediacy of military logistics rather than politics. Outside the ocean, Liberty drifted slowly, its bow yawing, where the rudder no longer held a commanded course. The escorting security vessel closed to offer suppression and recovery support, while regional Allied assets calculated interception vectors. The Royal Netherlands Navy radar post near Curaçao broadcast an alert, and their liaison began coordinating with Curaçao's maritime authorities to prepare tug assistance. Back in Bahia de Concordia, Colonel Rafael Ortega monitored the strike's aftermath in near real time. Telemetry confirmed the intended effects: localized deck breaches, disabled propulsion struts, and severed electronic control pathways. The FSC-9 coordination net had synchronized the swarm's approach, and withdrawal and encryption logs showed no external interference. Iranian technical advisors in Puerto Cabello relayed diagnostic overlays to Venezuelan engineers confirming the CDPW-2 warheads had performed within expected parameters. Ortega permitted no triumphalism. His goal had been paralysis with plausible deniability, and the Ocean Liberty's immobilization fit that calculus. Washington's immediate response combined military caution and diplomatic thunder. The United States Navy raised its threat posture in the region, ordering airborne surveillance to circle the disabled tanker and dispatching a specialized damage-controlled detachment via helicopter. Public statements urged restraint, emphasized the safety of the civilian crew, and called for an impartial inquiry into the incident language designed to keep escalation channels open while signaling resolve. Caracas predictably issued a terse communique, framing the event as an act of sovereign defense against an unauthorized logistical presence in waters it claimed to monitor. International media amplified both narratives, turning a technical interdiction into a geopolitical spectacle. Environmental officers aboard the Ocean Liberty reported no immediate breach of fuel tanks. The CDPW-2's focused penetration had avoided bulk cargo detonation, but the risk of secondary fires and slow leaks remained. United States salvage teams prepared containment booms and remote monitoring buoys, mindful that an environmental incident would compound political fallout across the Caribbean. Meanwhile, naval lawyers on both sides began parsing conventions examining whether a state-sponsored swarm strike constituted an act of armed attack or a decisive, deniable demonstration of capability. As diplomats readied statements and navies repositioned assets, the human dimension threaded quietly through the technical drama. Crew members of the Ocean Liberty huddled on deck wrapped in thermal blankets, shaken but alive. Their faces reflected fatigue, fear, and the bewildering intimacy of seeing modern warfare arrive as insects in the sky. Colonel Rafael Ortega observed the images and felt the calibrated weight of his decision, a paralysis that spoke loudly to power yet left untouched a fragile margin for escalation or de-escalation. News of the Ocean Liberty incident rippled through defense ministries before dawn reached Washington. Within hours, intelligence assessments labeled the Venezuelan FPV strike as the first confirmed instance of a coordinated maritime drone swarm, disabling a major vessel without conventional ordnance. The Pentagon Situation Room glowed with digital overlays, damaged schematics, flight path reconstructions, and intercepted Venezuelan radio chatter referencing Margarita Dawn. Analysts debated intent, whether Caracas sought escalation or simply credibility and deterrence. In Caracas, official channels framed the event as a defensive response. The Bolivarian armed forces presented footage of patrol boats observing an unidentified foreign tanker entering restricted waters. Colonel Rafael Ortega was not mentioned by name, but insiders recognized his strategic signature precision calibrated to showcase control, not chaos. Within military circles, his reputation transformed overnight from theoretical engineer to operational pioneer. Yet even his own staff understood the thin ice they trod. One misinterpreted signal, and the Caribbean could ignite into a multinational standoff. Across the Atlantic, European governments urged de-escalation. The Royal Netherlands Navy increased air patrols from Curaçao, wary that the drone network which paralyzed the Ocean Liberty might now target commercial shipping. Insurance companies adjusted risk indexes, spiking premiums for routes near Isla Margarita. At the United Nations, diplomats traded restrained accusations cloaked in procedural language about maritime sovereignty and technological proliferation. The phrase swarm deterrence entered policy lexicons overnight. Meanwhile, intelligence sources in the Gulf suggested Iranian specialists had quietly departed Venezuelan ports aboard civilian flights. Their role, officially advisory, hinted at a growing export of asymmetric drone doctrine linking Tehran and Caracas. Washington's response mixed firmness and patience. A joint task group formed under the banner of Operation Steadfast Tide, combining United States Navy engineers, Royal Netherlands Navy radar specialists, and Caribbean partners to enhance detection grids against low-altitude FPVs. For the Venezuelan command, the operation had already achieved its psychological vector. The Ocean Liberty floated silent and intact, a symbol of vulnerability and restraint. Colonel Rafael Ortega prepared his situational brief for the Ministry of Defense, aware that his next challenge would not be technical, but diplomatic, proving that Venezuela could wield precision without inviting reprisal. The Caribbean sea lanes glittered under satellite watch, transformed into an invisible frontier where every wave now carried a question of control legitimacy and the thin boundary between deterrence and provocation. The Ocean Liberty drifted under tow, her bow angled toward the horizon, a wounded colossus limping toward Point Caravelas. Venezuelan patrol boats escorted from a distance, maintaining silent observation while international salvage teams maneuvered to stabilize her damaged propulsion housings. Helicopters from the United States Navy's Rapid Response Detachment circled overhead, scanning for residual heat signatures that might indicate unexploded ordnance. None were found. The ship was alive, but its heart, its propulsion, remained frozen. Inside Bahia de Concordia's command bunker, Colonel Rafael Ortega listened to the static hum of encrypted debriefings. The Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade had been ordered to stand down. Their aircraft secured their data sealed in classified archives. Ortega's expression remained composed as he addressed his officers. "We have demonstrated precision. Now we must demonstrate discipline." For him, the strike had validated a theory that small states could exert influence through technology crafting, deterrence, not from tonnage or missiles, but from geometry, timing, and control. Yet beneath that satisfaction lay a heavy disquiet. Images from international news networks displayed the Ocean Liberty's crew being evacuated, faces drawn and silent under the relentless sun. Ortega studied those faces. He recognized exhaustion, the universal fatigue of those caught between strategy and circumstance. A child's drawing discovered in a crewman's quarters during damage inspection later circulated across media, a crude picture of a ship, a family, and the word home. That image, magnified on news to screens, softened narratives on both sides. Washington responded cautiously. The official report labeled the event an asymmetric act of aggression, yet its tone hinted at deliberate restraint. The Pentagon privately acknowledged the precision and minimal casualties as indicators of a calibrated strike. Behind closed doors, analysts studied telemetry and trajectory data, admiring with reluctant respect the technical coherence of Venezuela's FSC-9 mesh. The United States Navy's post-incident review concluded that conventional radar doctrines were insufficient against distributed drone swarms operating below detection arcs. Operation Steadfast Tide expanded into a regional initiative to install low-altitude radar nodes across the Lesser Antilles. In Caracas, the government celebrated the mission as proof of sovereignty. National television hailed the defense of the Caribbean frontier while avoiding direct acknowledgement of a deliberate attack. Ortega received a quiet commendation and an equally quiet warning: "You have proven our capability," said the defense minister, "but the world now watches our restraint." Venezuela's leadership knew that triumph without control could become isolation. The Bolivarian Coastal Defense Drone Brigade became both symbol and liability, admired, domestically scrutinized abroad. Environmental specialists from both nations conducted joint surveys around the incident site. The Caribbean currents carried faint trails of oil and debris, but spared large-scale contamination. Marine biologists from Curaçao observed scattered harm to coral structures near Isla Margarita, caused not by fuel leaks, but by the sonic vibrations of concentrated drone blasts. The findings added a layer of complexity. Even precision deterrence carries ecological cost. Ortega received those reports with the same calm he had displayed before the strike. War, he said to his aides, is not only about targets, it is about the ripples that follow. Weeks later, the Ocean Liberty reached the San Cristobal port complex under tow. Engineers inspected the CDPW-2 penetration points, clean, narrow, almost surgical, and marveled that such small devices could disable a ship 10 times their combined weight. Journalists coined phrases like the surgical storm and the invisible siege, comparing Ortega's swarm strike to historical moments when technology redefined scale. Think tanks across continents began modeling future conflicts where micro-drones could replace missiles as tools of intimidation and control. Yet amid technical fascination, the human element persisted. Captain Thomas Mercer was later interviewed aboard the repair dock. His words were measured but piercing. "We saw 30 shadows against the sunrise. In that moment, the ocean stopped feeling infinite. It felt like it belonged to whoever controlled those shadows. His reflection captured what doctrine could not, that modern conflict no longer demanded destruction to project power. It merely required precision and presence. Colonel Rafael Ortega, summoned months later to address an academic forum in Caracas, concluded his speech with a quiet appeal that startled his audience. Technology has made deterrence surgical, he said, but precision without compassion is still barbarism. Our next frontier is not how small we can make the machines, but how large we can keep our humanity. The Caribbean bathed again in its indifferent sunlight, resumed the rhythms of commerce and current. Yet under the waves, the echoes of Margarita dawn lingered the data logs, the broken circuits, the silent proof that a handful of drones had rewritten maritime security doctrine. For both nations, it became a lesson in proportion that dominance could be achieved not through overwhelming force, but through measured will, and that true power might one day be defined by the courage to stop short of catastrophe. If you value clear cinematic battlefield analysis that connects tactics, technology, and the human dimension, subscribe for more.